We'll wait just a couple more moments to see who else joins us. Oh, we'll get started in just a moment or two. Good to see everybody. You're also welcome to use the chat function. I'll cover a few sort of nuts and bolts about avenues and then really look forward to your questions. And if we're a small enough group, we can unmute and just ask questions directly if you'd like. Great. Well, I will get started. I'm Dave Buckwell, Director of Admissions and Enrollment Management for Avenues New York, and happy to be here today and part of the entire program and share a little bit about Avenues with you. We are fortunate to be located in a really sort of neat neighborhood for a school on the High Line in far west Chelsea, sort of surrounded by 40 or 50 of the best art galleries in the world, just down the block from Chelsea Piers, which our first to fifth graders utilize for their physical education classes in an exclusive partnership we have, and just really a lot of the best of New York that is accessible for our students in different years. If it's pre-K students utilizing the High Line to learn about nature, or it's our second graders doing water testing in the Hudson River safely, or it's students who are able to, in the middle and upper grades, take pretty extensive field trips into the community and do a lot of community engagement work as part of the curriculum. A little bit about me. So I came from the world of college admissions before I got to Avenues, and have just had the privilege of being able to, and I've had the privilege of being able to have my first school admissions position in the Avenues community. And really what I think I always talk about, what drew me to Avenues after so long working within the context of highly selective college admissions, was just wanting to have a better sense of what's going on in nursery through 12 education. And there are a lot of students showing up at even a place like Columbia, exhausted, sometimes lacking some resiliency, maybe just in some cases not even well. And what could be done, and what are some of the new paths that educators are looking at in nursery through 12 education that can really create a more sustainable education journey for our students, so that really high achieving students aren't burning out at certain points. And that's kind of Avenues, this idea that you can have a very rigorous education, but it's one that's balanced in terms of the number of hours of homework a student has per night, and in terms of the opportunity to direct their own learning a little bit, meaning it's not just memorizing a bunch of facts for an exam, but really taking some of their own questioning, their own curiosity, and being able to let that lead and drive some of the work they do in multiple disciplines. So that's very quick snapshot moving ahead here, I thought what we would try to talk about, what would be helpful is if you could in the chat box, just share with me which grades you're interested in for your child or for your children. Feel free to please just add that right to the chat box. We, in our overview today, I think hoping to cover just a little bit about who we are, the basics. I'll touch on KSC grade 5 and 3rd grade, great. I'll touch a little bit on the lower division and then the upper division at Avenues and missions and financial aid, and then we'll just take more questions. The basics. So I mentioned already our location. We're a comprehensive school, so we have students enrolled in a CHOOSE program through the high school. We're all gender, we're non-denominational, and we are this year and then next year will be about 1,750 students. So that is about 70 students in our CHOOSE program, about 400 students in our early learning center, about 600 students in our lower division, which runs grades 1 through 5. And then about 700 students, or maybe just over 700 next year in the upper division, which is grades 6 through 12, and includes both our middle grades program, grades 6 through 8, and our high school or upper grades, grades 9 through 12. Nearly half of our students self-identify as students of color, and nearly a quarter now identify as historically underrepresented students of color within the context maybe of New York City independent schools. And what I mean by that are typically students who would identify as African American or Black, Latinx, and or Native. And we are working hard. I mean, we definitely have work to do to be as representative of the great city we call home. But it is a priority. And our faculty, nearly about half of our faculty identify as faculty of color, and not quite a quarter identify as historically underrepresented faculty of color. But again, I think something that we're very much looking towards in our future to being more representative, not less. Sort of the quick attributes of an Avenues education: global, innovative, inclusive. So global is that we are one school in New York, and New York is our first campus, but we have a sister partner campus in Sao Paulo, which opened just a few years ago. And that's provided opportunities for our faculty and our students and families to have exchanges, opportunities that look like in a kindergarten classroom, kindergarten students being able to chat with each other and having, pen pals, to our upper grade students spending 2 weeks with each other at one campus or another. Our Highliner, which is our main student journalism publication, went to Sao Paulo for a few weeks this winter, got the Sao Paulo's version of the Highliner, their main student journalism publication, off the ground as they had their first junior class this year and first senior class next year. It means immersion in the early years. So through grade 5, we offer a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity of a full biliterate program with English and another language, and it's either Mandarin or Spanish that students elect or families elect when they join Avenues, and it's from nursery through grade 5. How that works: we have one non-immersion class for grade 5, and then in grade 6, no prior target language knowledge or exposure is required for Mandarin or Spanish. Instead, what we do is we start at an intro or a novice level, and so it becomes a class of many classes students take when they go into the middle and upper school, so we can support both students who are new to Mandarin and Spanish, as well as some of our students who've been through the immersion program and maybe are approaching fluency, basically like different levels for students. We're innovative in that what we offer and what is a hallmark of an Avenues education is that a lot of the best research, the latest research in how students learn today, we're actually able to apply pretty quickly and constantly are evolving in terms of our teaching and learning practices. What you find at many other schools, as you look closer, you get to know schools, a lot of schools want to do what we do, want to offer project-based learning, want to offer highly collaborative learning, deeper learning opportunities where you might work on projects for an extended period of time versus just memorizing facts for an exam, but it can be harder if you have the same science department or history department chair for 25 years to pivot and truly enact a very different or a more now or future oriented curriculum. And so we've really benefited from being a new school in that mindset, but also hiring faculty and experienced educators who really are about celebrating innovation and learning and celebrating how learning looks different today for students. We are inclusive in the sense that I think in the context of today's sessions, I think our keynote speaker talked about this a little bit, and I identify from my prior institutions, which were hundreds of years old, that a lot of institutions were founded at a place and a time where they were only open to one SES or one gender or one faith, never mind excluding sometimes students or underrepresented students of color. Avenues was founded 10 years ago. So we don't have a history that necessarily excluded or limited who could join us and who could be part of our campus community and community of learners. So we do celebrate, I think, a diversity of voice and perspective on our campus, which has been pretty remarkable to see, even compared to some other institutions I worked at prior. And part of what also makes us inclusive is our approach is very much about student-centered learning. What that typically means, if you hear student-centered learning versus, say, teacher-centered learning, is a lot of classrooms in most schools look like the teacher in the front of the room with rows of desks of which students are sitting with the direction or the orientation to what's happening in the classroom with the teacher. Our classrooms are designed, are structured, the milieu is about the student, and so students sit in small groups or around in a circle, even on the floor for morning meeting in our early years, and then when they get to the middle grades and upper grades, they're sitting in a round or oval table where sometimes if you walk in on a tour at Avenues, you see students discussing what's going on. You have to almost look and find the teacher who's sitting among the students and, facilitating the conversation that our students are driving. Sometimes you also get a sense of that being known as progressive education, but a little bit more than just that for us. The immersion piece, I'm just going to touch on briefly, but basically the opportunity is in a fully biliterate program, our students from nursery to grade 5 spend 50% of their instructional time in English and 50% in the target language. So what it looks like is they're not just learning the language, they're learning content through the language. So they still do math every day, but so they start a problem, let's say they're doing factors in math or a new lesson in math in English on Monday, that then on Tuesday in their partner classroom with their partner teachers in that target language, they continue that lesson. It's not a repeat of the lesson or translated version. They're continuing that math concept in the second language. And over time and over several years, there's so many benefits to it, but we know the biggest benefits in terms of the research. Our students are culturally competent, can switch between 2 different languages and switch also between different points of view and different disciplines. There's flexibility, there's sort of cognitive adaptation. They're known for students who speak multiple languages, possibly being a little more creative, better decision making, able to understand the nuance in what someone's saying and how they're saying it. And so that actually spirals into what we do in our upper division, which is really designed to capitalize on that then you could take in multidisciplinary education and project-based learning to that next level and really allow students to start driving their own education. I'm going to move to the next slide here. Just a little bit more on kindergarten and grade 5. We're anchored in literacy. It's just biliteracy. So it's reading and writing and oral production in 2 languages. Math is certainly a cornerstone, and math is taught in both languages. World Course can be taught in both languages too, and World Course is Avenues' 15-year journey from nursery through grade 12 of history and social studies that are issues and themes on identity to understanding the world and our civilizations. And that looks very different in kindergarten, where they're studying who they are and their community and their identities, versus what they might do in a world course class in 9th or 10th grade, where they're studying revolutions and revolutions across different civilizations and different timestamps in our history. Specials are a big part of our education, and we're really lucky. We offer both beautiful state-of-the-art spaces for science, which is a special, meaning our students go to a science teacher in addition to their home teacher for science. We take it very seriously, even in the early years, even in nursery and even in grade 2. And they also go to specials for art and music, and those are actually taught in the target language through grade 3. They go to wellness and movement, which is a fantastic partnership with Chelsea Piers. I think I mentioned just at the outset, meaning students will have the chance to actually take their physical education classes a couple times a week, whether it's in parkour or hockey or swimming, over at Chelsea Piers, in addition to what they do in recess or in our movement rooms. And we do have 25,000 square feet of physical education space in our 2 buildings. And so there's outdoor play space, as well as we utilize the local parks for students, and recess being important every day. For the upper division, real quick, the difference is we do block scheduling. So if you figure a student might have a schedule of 8 classes, instead of taking them all each day, 5 days a week, they're taking 4 on a Monday and 4 on a Tuesday and going back and forth, kind of like the way immersion works in the early years. We move from immersion specifically to intensive language. And so that is so that the other streams of knowledge can be made more available, including more dedicated science and math classes as students move into the middle and upper grades. For new students who join us for 5th grade or for 6th grade, it means that they will take the appropriate level of Mandarin or Spanish. We welcome new students for those grades, so we run classes that are at the intro or intermediate level, as we will offer some more advanced classes for students who came through immersion. There are a lot of chances in all the other classes for students to mingle based on their placement in math or their placement in science, and then the elective classes that they take. Project-based learning typically looks like 3 to 5 students in a particular class working on a project. So if you're in a 7th or 8th grade science class and they're working on Newtonian physics boxes after learning some physics principles, and they now are going to make a live action box that demonstrates this physical principle, they'll work not just on their own, but with 3-4 other students. And part of the lesson is navigating what they're learning, utilizing the maker space, working with their teachers on their design and iterating the design and testing it out and doing that together. And part of the learning is that it's collaborative. They learn from each other, not just from doing that project solo. Looks like discussion-based classes as well, as I mentioned before. And so our students, even in math, are talking about how they approach solving a problem. That matters as much, the why, as did they get the problem right, or what was the answer to the problem. There are chances to live. What we hope is that our students become very comfortable and at ease beyond their borders. And so there are up to 24 different trips where students on spring breaks in our 5th term, maybe even in the early summer, have a chance to be at one of our other campuses, or just in a faculty-driven program in another part of the world, perhaps use their target language and work on a STEM problem or a humanities problem, or could be studying art history in Italy, or climate science in Costa Rica, or building cell phones from scratch at our campus in Shenzhen, and then using their Mandarin in the tech markets to buy the tools, the equipment that they need. Mastery means we give students time and space during the day to pursue their developing interests, dare I call them passions, and students have the chance over several years perhaps to go really deep with their learning in an area and a specific intellectual questions that they have. That could look everything like building a particle accelerator from scratch, which one of our seniors has been working on, and then designing a curriculum that other schools can work with their students on developing and building out a particle accelerator, making physics fun for students. That's Avalon. She's heading off to Yale next year. Or it could be a real interest in constitutional law that leads to founding a constitutional law club, and then that club designing and launching the first ever high school law review with peer-reviewed opinion articles based on recent Supreme Court cases. And 4 of our 9 Supreme Court justices and law reviews, including Harvard and Georgetown, have mentored our students in that program. And Olivia, who founded that law review, she is heading off to study constitutional law at the University of Chicago this fall. Last couple of things I'll say about the Dean's program and then move into your questions. We have a program that is meant to be holistic starting in 6th grade, when students would have had their teachers for most of the day who really know them well, and that's your main contact as parents or family members as well. So when they're in 8 different classes, maybe with 8 different teachers, the deans fulfill that one point of contact role where a student has their go-to if anything's going wrong or they have questions or things are going really well, but as their go-to and their resource to navigating the avenues experience. That dean also becomes the go-to for families and the go-to for faculty about a particular student. So really that dean is serving and advocating for the student academically, socially, emotionally, as they move through what are the adolescent and then teenage years. And they eventually, the dean's program also becomes the college counseling program, and deans work with students and families through the application process before heading off to college. We have 35 athletic teams these days. We have a thriving art scene, more than 12.5 different student groups, and then a bunch of art class electives. So really great opportunities, particularly in the visual arts, the music scene, especially jazz, film scene. We've now sent a few students off to the finest film programs in the country. We do theater, we do dance. Those scenes are growing. And then there are a number of student groups as well as student, faculty, and parent groups that support diversity, equity, and inclusion, both spaces for dialogue as well as organizations and committees on campus that really drive both a racial literacy curriculum in the teaching and learning that happens through all years, with each division creating talks and division-wide opportunities for all students, all families to engage in issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and really with the goal of supporting our students and our families along with our faculty in navigating some of the obstacles that they're likely to find in a independent school environment. And then the college list I'll just mention, and I get questions even from kindergarten families about our college list. We now have 5 graduating classes. The most represented institutions where our students have matriculated, and these are schools that have 7 or more grads. They end up being about 35 to 40% of our graduates are attending these 8 schools. And they include NYU, University of Southern California, Cornell, Stanford, University of Chicago, University of Pennsylvania, Skidmore, Barnard, I think I said University of Chicago. So you can check out that list. I think the 4-year list is now up on our website, and the 5-year list with the seniors who just graduated will be up there very shortly. Financial aid. You apply at the same time as you apply for admission. We meet 100% of your demonstrated need. Aid is typically available starting in kindergarten, and we will probably be spending more than $12.5 million on need-based scholarships this coming fall. And admissions, I'll take your questions, but like other schools, a holistic process, highly selective process. We really get to know your children and your family through the process. And we do care about not just recruiting and then evaluating you for admissions to avenues, but it's also about helping you find the right fit even if we really like you and ultimately for you that means another school, or we together discover that maybe another school is a better fit. We're just there. Our goal and our charge is not just to be an admissions office, but also provide resources for families that are looking at avenues and be educational advisors to you in your own children's journey. So we take that part of our job with a lot of pride and a lot of care. Um, we have our next virtual parent introductory event on Tuesday, June 16th. You can register at the Visit Us link on our website. And we'll also have a variety of smaller sessions posted if you want to go to something a little bit more like this, live Q&A, talk to our admissions team members and parents, and just sort of get to know avenues a little bit more, especially for your own children's admissions process. I'm going to switch over now to the chat portion here. I only see a couple of questions so far, so I think we have a potential third grader, potential fifth grader. Is that would be for the years of entry? So if we're talking about for next fall, 2020, or 2021, 2022, they would be going into third grade and going into fifth grade. Is that right? Just asking folks who chimed in. Yup, third grade, and I guess yes, fifth grade. So third grade can be tricky because of immersion, and we will take new students, and the way it works with a lot of support that we provide is students can come in through first grade without the target language proficiency, meaning some reading, writing, or grade level reading, writing, and oral production for English, but then also for target language of either Spanish or Mandarin between grades 2 and grades 4. Because they have to be at or around the grade, they need to have, and they get assessed if they're applying if you're applying for admissions for grade 2 or 4 entry in both languages. And we can work with students if they have some exposure to Spanish or Mandarin, but if they don't have any exposure, and that means also with a little bit of reading and writing, not just orally, that can be a challenge. And we'll work with your family. We'll manage your expectations through the process. But we typically don't enroll a lot of students between grades 2 and 4 for those reasons. Plus, it's also mostly based on attrition in those years, and we're usually full from kindergarten and first grade. But it's possible. And then for grade 5, that is the ultimate year for immersion, but because that is an entry point for other schools where middle grades often starts, for us, middle grade starts at 6th grade. So that's our bigger entry point, but we have, because of demand, especially with siblings of our current families, created one class, novice Spanish class, so students can join in 5th grade with no prior Mandarin or Spanish experience and be part of a 5th year or 5th grade class where they get exposure to the rest of the grade for wellness and movement and in a rotation of electives and lunch and such, but they get to, in their own small class, get exposure to Spanish where they might be. And we have a teacher who teaches that class, which is intentionally small, typically 8 to 10 students in that class with one teacher. And Rachel Krybeck actually is fluent and teaches in both languages. So it's a really wonderful introduction to avenues for that year. I see a question: if my child is applying for grade 5, how many students are admitted at that grade? Well, that's a perfect follow-up. So typically that class I just mentioned is about 8 to 10 students. So we usually don't admit many more than that. We have a couple students we'll admit, maybe they're gonna end up matriculating elsewhere, but typically we get a few dozen applications for 5th grade, and we're able to admit a little bit over a dozen students to enroll that class of about 8 to 10. There once in a while is a student who can join us for 5th grade immersion. Maybe their family or their prior school was an immersion school in either Spanish or Mandarin, and they can join the class in the last biliterate year. Other questions that you have? And thank you all for staying. I hope this has been helpful to you so far. And you can also feel free, if you'd like, you can unmute yourself. You are welcome, if you'd like, to ask me questions directly, your comfort level. And I see got maybe a new fair attendee. Welcome. So wrapping up our Q&A here. Any last questions? Well, you have. I appreciate those who've been with me for a while now. We made some good progress. Talked a lot about avenues, the curriculum, and then the financial aid admissions process. But that next parent virtual information event, which is on June 16th, that's a great way to hear. You'll hear directly from live from our division heads, from a couple of parents and a couple of current students, which has been really wonderful. And then we will also have some smaller sessions, Q&A sessions or parent coffees, sort of trying to replace our what would have been our spring tours, and we'll try to host those throughout the summer. There seems to be demand for them before we'll offer a very large suite of events that we offer each fall, which include open houses for the upper division and smaller kindergarten and lower division specific events for K through 5. And then a few specific thematic events, including we'll do a specific program for families interested in diversity, equity, and inclusion at Avenues. In the fall, we'll do one on STEAM, one on athletics. That gives families a chance to go deeper in some of the major aspects of an Avenues education that may be of very important interest to you all. So, well, thank you very much. I'll let you have a couple more minutes before joining the, I think, concluding remarks at 5:55. It's been a privilege, and thank you for learning more about Avenues. See if you have any last questions.